Thank you for coming to the Harvestworks live streaming event. My name is Carol Parkinson, and I'm the director of our nonprofit Digital Media Arts Center in New York City. Our collaboration with Experimental Intermedia continues with our third Zoom-in, OLAP, also known as our online live art performance community discussion forum. For this event, we've invited composer Sarah Weaver, who will present her recent work in network arts for large virtual ensemble, and also discuss technologies that she has used, including JackTrip, SonoBus, and Vimeo Live. Following a presentation by Sarah and a question and answer period from you, the audience, the forum will be open to anyone who would like to discuss online live art performance ideas or projects, as well as any technical or conceptual concerns. The discussion forum will be led by Katherine Liberovskaya of Experimental Intermedia. She is an intermedia artist and curator who will now introduce Sarah. Thank you.
So we're extremely pleased to have Sarah Weaver with us today, who's been working in network arts for over 15 years, way before this pandemic. So she was on top of it when it started. And so for many years, she's been working on compositions for large ensembles that were remote. So um, she could, she'll certainly tell us all about that and how she works with them. And she's also now teaching at New School, composition, I believe, or ensemble. And yeah, and usually, so this is a very informal forum for anyone who's here the first time. We have a guest and who talk about their online live performance work for about a half an hour, but it's not that strict. And then we have a question and answer period, and then um, after the question and answer period, specifically about the guest presentation, we can also start discussing other things. So if anyone would like to either tell us about a project they're working on or about an idea, or if they have an idea and they're wondering how to do it, or if they want to ask or tell us about a technology, um, it's all it's about all that too. So you're most welcome. So now, without further ado, we bring you Sarah Weaver. Oh, and Carol. So this is what I would suggest to go into speakers.
Okay, got it. Is Sarah there?
I'm here,
Sarah.
yes.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Oh, so Sarah, yeah, please. Go.
Okay. Yes, I would you like to put me in speaker view or
Yes, you are in speaker view.
Oh, okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here today and yeah, honored to be in this forum with these wonderful organizations, Harvestworks and Experimental Intermedia, that to me have also been part of what has led to being able to do network arts today. There are many components to this, both artistic and technological, and I absolutely see these organizations as part of this ecosystem. So again, really happy to be able to speak today about kind of the state of network arts and to offer some advice about different technologies that perhaps could help you with your projects as well. So I would definitely like for this to be interactive. I'll give a couple of excerpts from recent projects to kind of show the work, but also we'll be going through some different websites of technologies, and I can advise on perhaps technologies that are useful, again, for your specific setups. and setups you may encounter at a time like this. So I have a couple of slides and some websites as resources, and then we can go also to more interactive parts. So please feel free to put questions in the chat as we go. Just do a quick screen share. One moment. Okay. So just briefly, artists and organizations that I've been involved with and have also kind of led to this time. So there's my composer website there. Pauline Oliveras, who many of you may know, was an esteemed composer and technologist and a pioneer of electronic music and accordionist. So she was the one actually introduced me to this medium back in 2006. She was working at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and also Deep Listening Institute and become involved in this medium through in collaboration with Chris Chafe, who you see listed there. He's the author of the JackTrip audio software that we use. So that was some of the initial intersections was Pauline and Chris Chafe's JackTrip audio software that was being developed at Stanford, where he's the director of Karma, which many of you may know. And he is also a composer, and improviser, and cellist. And then also Mark Dresser, at that time, we became intersected in this work. And he has also continued, I think, these three people have really were at the core of when I began in this, and then there's been many people that have built out of these circles. Some people that I see are here today, so it's very happy to be together in this. NowNet Arts is a nonprofit organization that I started in 2017 to bring this work out more into the professional venues. Because up to that point, when we needed very high bandwidth internet and high quality of service internet that was really only available sort of privately and in the research networks at universities and some government buildings. In the U.S., the organization is called Internet 2. If any of you have heard of that, internet2.edu is their website. But that was a kind of private network that we ran the softwares on. But the public internet started to become better in certain spots, and we were able to start bringing the work out into more public arts venues. So that's when I started NowNet Arts, to kind of bring it out of the research realm and into the artistic world. Professional artistic world. I also started the Journal of Network Music and Arts, JONMA. This is an open access journal out of Stony Brook University, and this is an open access journal. So you can access all the articles that have been published, and we're about to put out a new issue probably at the end of this month. So you keep track of that journal. I'm the editor, and then also the editorial board. Chris Chafe and Meg Shidell, who many of you may know as well, is on the editorial board. And that's been really a wonderful development and could be a good resource, for information and also to consider submitting your work. And very recently, this past year, the JackTrip Foundation was founded, and that's at jacktrip.org. So I will speak more about that as we go, and we're going to take a look at that website. But that's an organization that is formed around these new expanded efforts to bring JackTrip more to the public and more to home use, as we need today, and to support kind of the network arts field at a larger sense as well. So I'm on the board of the JackTrip Foundation. Okay, so some of the technology that we're going to look at, and I also wanted to mention, so we have JackTrip here. That's a network audio software, again, that I've been using since 2006 and had been developed a few years before that as well. So it's been around a long time and has really been the standard in the field. Right? Other technologies that we have needed for the field have evolved, and we've used many different ones, but JackTrip has really been the constant. And I just want to emphasize that is really been consistent throughout and remains so in this work. QuackTrip is a recent version of JackTrip that was made by Miller Puckett, that many of you also may know here, the author of Ph.D. and Max MSP. And so he got involved with network audio at the time of the pandemic to make a version that could be accessible also to the public, that's based in Ph.D. So he made a suite of softwares, Quack, Neti, and Music 101. So we'll check out a bit of that. So Jamulus is another network audio software that has come on the scene. And I could also recommend this one, and it has some compatibility with JackTrip as well. I'll talk about later, but definitely recommend looking at that, and we will in a bit. SonoBus, which I was mentioning to Carol, has really just came out in the past couple of months, but this has been wonderful development as well, and has helped a lot of people to be able to work with this technology from home. Open broadcasting software, so I know a number of you are familiar with. That's more on the video side, but also utilizing this software where we can route our audio and video and then send that out to streaming platforms. And I'm listing Vimeo Live here as that's the best version of a streaming platform that we found so far for, I guess, performing arts, we can say. There's a lot of different platforms you can use for different purposes, but Vimeo Live has been the best so far that we found. I think ultimately we need a custom online venue that'll be customized for network arts and contemporary arts, audio and video softwares that we're using. But yeah, for now we can definitely keep working with Vimeo Live. Okay, and some artistic strategies that are I've been involved in with this work. So in network arts, as you may know, there's a bit of delay, or what we call latency, but I prefer just to call it time dimensions, right? Time dimensionality. So you think of a steady beat as local, right? And once you go beyond the local, then you're crossing time zones, you're crossing the physics of time, and so we're just in a new time dimensions that we're working with. And certainly the electronic scene has been working in that way for a long time, right? And again, so I'm really happy to be here speaking with you all this. So it's a really good fit. And there's been a lot of great history in working in many different realms of time. So in my work, I use music notation, graphic notation, text notation, improvisation, sonification, conducting gestures. Right? It's kind of a combination of elements. And you can see these key concepts I've been working with that also kind of speak to network, right? And pluralism, and maximalism, integral multiplicity. And then different strategies, right, that we can utilize for these types of settings. And so this is really, again, just to draw from the history of and contemporary practices in music and arts and contemporary arts can be applied to this medium. We don't have to start from scratch or think of it as an other, right? It's just an extension and kind of simultaneity with contemporary art. And we can certainly draw from all of these tools we already have in addition to developing new strategies. Okay. And another element of this, and especially coming out of Pauline Oliveras' work and their deep listening practice, I think that's a good realm to be in for this work, where we have these kind of attentional tunings. So thinking of here as a composite location, right? Like we're here all together, even though we're in our different physical locations. We have a sense of being here together as a composite. Right, composite reality, composite sustain of time, space, or resonance. Right, so thinking of these different concepts where we're in network arts, where we are networked in these ways, especially now, as Katherine was saying before, in my projects I was involved in, we would have ensembles in different locations, and we would connect the ensembles. But now, really, everybody is in their own locations. So then to start to tune in these other ways. Right, that we have a sense of now, we have a sense of here. Even though we're in different physical locations, we can tune in these ways to create presence and synchrony in the work. Right. So getting right into some excerpts. So this is the most recent work This was for the NowNet Arts Festival that just took place on December 20th, 2020. And I saw Jerry Hemingway is here today, and you'll see him in this excerpt. And there's a list of performers here. And I wanted to share parts of this excerpt so you can hear and see the virtual ensemble using JackTrip. Okay. And so we were able to connect everyone in all these different locations. They're all performing from home, right? Using JackTrip on their computers. So they all had computers and interfaces and headphones. And I was using a remote cloud server that everyone connected to. And we all connected JackTrip there. And then what we have these days is called JackTrip Hub Mode, which has been fully expanded and utilized these days for larger ensembles. So the hub mode, what it means is that you connect to the remote server, and then all those connections are automatically then routed to each other. And so from home, you're sending a mono or a stereo signal, and then you're receiving a mono stereo signal back, mono or stereo. So the bandwidth requirement is very low, right? JackTrip channel, maybe 1 or 2 megs of internet, right, is all you have to send and receive if you're using this hub mode. I see there's a question here. What remote server did you use? Yeah, so there's, I didn't specify yet because that's a elaborate answer. The short answer is that I was using a Linode server where the JackTrip image had been uploaded to that server. There's also the JackTrip web services that's coming out that is more has a GUI and is more accessible for people to use. But for now, it's a bit of coding that needs to happen to get that up and running. So we were using kind of a server that we had coded for JackTrip. Yeah. And so we can hear everybody, and what is missing, still from that is a mixer, right? So it's good to know also we don't, there'll be mixers, they're on the way, but there have been, you can imagine a number of technical priorities are going on, especially to make JackTrip cross-platform, and all the different versions of JackTrip that have been made to kind of bring them together so they're compatible with each other. So that's been a big movement in recent times. And now there is JackTrip version 1.3, right, where a lot of those things have happened, and we can get more into the mixing. Yeah, it's a bit complex doing a remote mixer on a remote server.
I see, wow.
Yeah, and with a remote engineer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, so there's a lot going on with this. But what we did with the ensemble was just to, we have to ask everybody to monitor themselves. We set the gains, and then we say, okay, you don't have big dynamic jumps, right? So we make some accommodations so that we can self-mix. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you'll hear in this example that I think is pretty effective. But yeah, ultimately, it'd be great to have a mixer. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this for now, and I'm going to go to the excerpts. I'm going to play 2 excerpts. Okay. Just let me share here. Okay. So here we
my phone.
Okay. Yes, you can see here, everybody. And this is 53 minutes into the set. It's a long piece. And this is available in full on the NowNet Arts website on the Festival 2020 page. So I can point that to you later if you want to watch the whole thing. And there's a piece after this as well by Stephen Moore. Some of you may know, electronic musician. Okay, composer. So here we go. So this is a section of the piece where we're playing in a heterophony, right? A tune, and you'll hear how it's going. And I'm going to show you a different part, it's a little more active. You can see more of the conducting gestures. So please excuse my scroll. About right here. Maybe a little further. Okay. Okay. Yes. So again, this is an hour-long piece. You can check out the whole thing. um, but yeah, I really wanted to show that to show the latest examples, right, of JackTrip working online from home across great distance. Right. You see, there's performers there. They're in California, Chicago, New York, and Switzerland. Right. All playing together. And I'm not quite sure how it's sounding to you via Zoom. They're playing, so I do also recommend listening to it on the NowNet Arts Festival website for the kind of full effect. But I hope you can get a sense of how that's working. And you see for the video, we were still using Zoom, right? But we kind of cleaned it up a bit, and we put that through OBS, and I was able to crop out the top and the bottom, so and also do it from the audience view, and so we were still able to operate. I haven't really found better video conferencing solutions yet for large ensemble. There are certainly platforms coming out if you have a couple of video streams. So once you have a big group, still Zoom or Jitsi, and then trying to kind of go from there. So there's definitely a lot more visual development that I think we could do even within our the options that we have. But in any case, yeah, this is where we were in December. So I have some other examples I could play of JackTrip. I know this is kind of a shorter presentation, so you can definitely check my website for many more excerpts of projects, and I can also show you. Let me see here. Get out of that. I'll just share a couple more slides of places to follow up on this work, and then we'll go through a couple of websites. Okay, so this is one of the this is the most recent recording from 2011 to 2019, right? Compilation album called Synchrony Series, music of Sarah Weaver and collaborations. So this is solo, chamber, large ensemble, and network arts works utilizing these concepts of synchrony. And there's a piece there called Universal Synchrony Music, which is also a big project we did in Network Arts, a collaboration with the NASA Kepler and K2 mission and soundifications. So we can check that out if you like. So that's available on the label there. And I could also say, since Jerry's here too, so you'll see Jerry Hemingway's first track here, Node 111. So there's a solo piece utilizing network arts concepts for someone as skilled as Jerry Hemingway in being able to perform multiple time layers in simultaneity and working with various processes. So very specific for him in this work. And we have actually a whole album called Reality Access. I was thinking about that earlier, that today that these days it's very much like a reality access. So that's a whole solo album of pieces with these network concepts written for him. You could also see on that same website listed here. And then there's also a corresponding research paper for the journal that I mentioned. So Synchrony, music of Sarah Weaver and collaborations. And there you can get the full fleshing out of all the work from all those years, including all the network arts works. And I think there's about 17 excerpts in there. So you can definitely check out a lot of the history of it all. Okay. So with that said, so I would like to take you through a couple websites of these technologies. I see there's a chat here. I talk about my conductor role. Yes. So before I get into these other websites, so I've been a conductor for even longer than I've been in network arts. I was trained young in the classical conducting style for large ensembles, bands, and orchestras. And then I became exposed to a language called sound painting that originated with Walter Thompson. That actually started back in the 1970s in New York and downtown scene. With the Walter Thompson Orchestra, and so he was, part of a scene also with Butch Morris and others that John Zorn is one of the head and have developed languages for conducting improvisers, and so sound painting really became a kind of full-fledged language and is still growing. I think there's about 1,500 gestures in it, and it's multidisciplinary, so musicians, actors, dancers, visual artists. That is its own realm. I definitely recommend checking that out, soundpainting.com. So I became trained in that, and then after those earlier years, I started to develop more ways that I was working with gesture in my own ways with my compositions, and so I became a bit more narrow in gestures that I was using, and started developing some of my own gestures and ways to use gestures within the composed elements that I was working with, and then also adapting to this network art setting. All right, so that's a short encapsulation of a large topic. So, so here you saw me using some gestures that were you saw me giving just some regular cues, but then also I actually think of the gestures these days more like how electronics artists may process a sample. Right. So I have composed material and then gestures that are designated for that material that I utilize in various ways. Yeah. I could certainly answer more questions about that, but that's what I could say for now. Okay. All right. So then going on to these websites, I'm going to just put them in the chat. I think it'd be easier for you to look them up rather than me sharing my screen, and so you can also have them in your own records. Okay. So first, we're just going to look at jacktrip.org. Okay, so this is a new website for JackTrip, actually. But as you can see, all this becoming involved with this. So we have JackTrip Network Music Technology. So it's an open source software. Again, developed by Chris Chafe at Stanford in the early 2000s. And then you'll see here JackTrip Foundation, which is a recent development. And you'll see here as well the JackTrip Virtual Studio. Okay, so JackTrip Virtual Studio, which I can show you one right here. Okay, so this is a hardware box, right, that's been developed to make this more accessible to the public. So the head developer of the JackTrip Virtual Studio has a son that's in a boys choir, and he wanted the boys choir to be able to perform from home, the Ragazzi Boys Choir. And so he developed this hardware box that could be used with young children as well. So that's been in development and is working. He's got his, I think, 60 or 70 person choir, and more ensembles like that have been able to use this device from home to be able to sing and play together. So that's a recent development, and definitely look into that. So you have two options with JackTrip these days. The open source software that works. It was developed for Linux. I can show the box again. So this is a Hi-Fi Berry, excuse me. Based in the Raspberry Pi family. Yeah, that's been developed specifically to run JackTrip. Yes, yeah. So if you're running the open source version, right, then that was originally developed for Linux. More questions about the box. Yes, yes, it is USB, and it also connects wirelessly then to your device that then talks to the remote server. Yeah, so there's a couple of steps involved with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll show you a bit about that. Yeah. Yes, yeah, so that box, that's one option. And then if you're in the open source, it was originally developed for Linux, and it also works great on Mac. We kind of did that early on because a lot of people involved were also on Mac and weren't Linux programmers. So, so we got that going early on. It has been extended for Windows, but it's kind of hit or miss on Windows. It is very tricky to be cross-platform to that degree, but there has been great progress on that, and some people are able to run it on Windows. And also recently is running open source on Raspberry Pi. So if you have your own Raspberry Pi, you can get JackTrip running off of that as well. And a lot of that also just depends on what you need in terms of your audio interface and any accompanying software that you want to be using with JackTrip. So if you're in a voice choir and and you need just the microphone, right, like I showed you, you could just get one of those virtual studio kits and you're all set. But if you have a heavy duty audio interface and you need to run Macs and everything, you more likely need to run it off of your computer and do the open source version. So there's different build outs depending on your needs. Yeah. Okay, I have a question here. How's the experience of using JackTrip different without the additional hardware in the box? Yes, that's what I was just starting to get into there. That so the box will get you onto JackTrip, but the build outs that you may need to do, right, are what you need to kind of plan for, right? So this virtual studio kit, you can get your mono channel, leave stereo as well. But if you're trying to run other things, like a lot of people who are involved in network arts, right? They need heavy-duty microphones, right? Which require certain interfaces that need to be compatible and be able to be operated. And so that's when you need more substantial hardware, to go with JackTrip. Yeah, so I hope that... Okay, thanks for the talk. Do you know the research with IPv6 and multicast? Longworth puts forward by Don Forrest that maybe knows research in touch with Miller Puckett for Quack Trip. Yes, well, I know IPv6 and multicast. I've been involved with IPv6 also since the beginning, in the early days, especially when we were trying to connect with musicians in China, because they were on IPv6 and we were on IPv4, and some institutions had IPv6, so we had to build bridges back in the days, so I won't get into, but yeah, I'm familiar with that multicast, but yeah, we can... yeah, I could talk with Miller more about if there's updates on that. Yeah. Okay, other questions before we kind of move into this website here? Okay. What I can show you then, if you want to, if you explain the open source a bit, I'll show you the actual open source page if you want to try to get into the software. But for now, while we're on the JackTrip website, you just click on JackTrip Virtual Studio, that column on the right. Okay, and then you can scroll down and you can see the box there, right? Plug and play online music devices. And then below that is the JackTrip Web Services that's been developed. That's a web application that has a great interface, and you can use that as your remote server. Okay, so there's a lot there that you can look at over time. Okay. And then, well, put in here is the connection to the Karma site that has the open source software. How much is it? I believe the whole kit is around $150. Yeah. It's on sale at Amazon and Sweetwater, though it goes out of stock pretty quick these days, but you can definitely look into it there. Okay, so here's the Karma website that has the open source software. Okay, and it has some instruction here on how to use it. And guess what I could recommend is that, so NowNet Arts, my organization, is, we have a lab ensemble that's running JackTrip. And some of those people are here today as well, and perhaps can verify. Yeah, it is kind of tricky to learn how to run all on your own. So definitely welcome you to check out our lab ensemble, and we can show you how to do it. There's also the JackTrip certification program that's just been launched that will be starting March 1st. So if anybody's interested in that, please get in touch, and that will be a full-on training in operating JackTrip. There's a 3-month version for the full, and then there's a 1-month version just for the virtual studio, the box that I showed you. So yeah, say JackTrip, it's a bit to get into, but once you get it going, as Katherine can also verify, it's definitely worth it and workable. Yeah. Okay, so see, more question here. Yeah, I didn't share the screen. I'm just putting in the link so that you can look at it on your own screen. I think it's a little bit better. Okay, the biggest selling point of the no laptop desktop requirement is a Raspberry Pi in the box. Yes, yeah, because once you go cross-platform and cross-operating system, this it's very heavy to get um, uh, all of that happening. So that was another reason to put it in a hardware, its own hardware. And I think SoundJack also did this. That's another program that's out there. So they have a web version and a hardware version. So I think it's becoming more of a common strategy to have both available. Okay. And then Jackdrip, you have to poke holes in your firewall, for instance. Exactly. Yeah, so that's what we were running to early on. So before the pandemic, that was one of the reasons we had to be on those specialized internet uh, internet platforms, because you did have to poke holes in the firewall and arrange with that with the system administrators. But now that we're using remote cloud servers, you don't have to do that anymore. So the remote cloud server has to open firewalls. Yeah. And that was a huge, huge development. Yeah. So no more of that. But some people are still running machine servers. So they have a machine at their office or institution that has that internet, and they're able to make arrangements for open firewalls just within that where that machine is located. So people are still using those machines if they can open the firewalls in very specific ways. But I would say for the wider public and our community of artists, yeah, these remote cloud servers are working just fine. Yeah. And the I guess other aspect of that is when we're talking about latency and delay, there's a big movement right now, just in general in the internet world, to make more remote cloud servers, because the closer you can get one, the lower your latency will be. So for example, like if we had an ensemble all in New York that was using a remote cloud server all in New York, our latency would be much lower than if that server was in California or abroad. So there's various approaches with all that, but there's a lot of rapid development of remote cloud servers going on. Yeah. Okay, so if you want to see others, you would need a monitor. Yes, so this is audio only, right? So then we have to pair that with video conferencing. So like you saw, we paired it. We were muted in Zoom, right? And we just were able to remove our mute signs by leaving computer audio. It's a good tip. Yeah, I imagine along the way there will be a pairing with video conferencing platforms. We've also used one before the pandemic. We used UltraGrid, and that's I would say is the closest video equivalent to JackTrip. So that's open source out of a group in Prague, and that's software based, and you can run as many windows as your hardware can handle, but it's very high bandwidth. And so that's why it's harder to run from home, and definitely harder to run for many people all at once, like we can here in Zoom today. So yeah, there's definitely a lot more to be developing on that end. Okay. Yes, yeah, and so visual artists and audio artists performing together, right? So some of you were involved in that Optosonic Tea that we did a while back. Katherine and Ursula, who are here, kind of directing. I know a number of you were in that as well. So that was kind of an early time of bringing those elements together. And I think there's just really continues to be more development needed for those kinds of tools. I know the visual side requires much more bandwidth than the audio side, and that's been part of the challenge with that. Yeah, but there's I know a lot of the video and visual artists have gotten into OBS, and using OBS as your camera for Zoom or Jitsi. And so you can kind of do the reverse. You can bring it into your own camera instead of trying to get onto a platform to put it out. Yeah. So what's the software from Prague? It's called UltraGrid. I'll put the link in here. There we go. Okay, what's the problem about building a mixer with JackTrip? Right. So JackTrip is multi-channel and I said low latency uncompressed audio. So in the past, what you would do is you would get all the channels from your remote ensemble, and then you get them in Jack, right, and then be able to route them into your mixers locally, right, and sending and receiving all of your channels in and out of your local mixers. But with hub mode, um, it all happens automatically in the server on the server side. So what you have to be able to do is open up on the server side and insert the mixer in between all those connections. So one thing is it takes a lot more bandwidth to do that, and then can create a lot more latency, and it's just very technically complicated. So it's in process, and I think it's going to happen. But it's much more complicated to do it remotely than it had been to be able to do it when we had our more like hardware connections, for that. Okay. It's question time. Yes, it's question time. I'm also going to just list other websites here. Maybe we don't have time to cover them all, but I will list them here, and then you can look at them as you'd like and or ask me questions. Okay, but let me just read this last one here. So anyone found both OBS issues with glitch and audio delay and Vimeo Livestream issues with glitch and crashing to be problematic? Whether recommended for better broadcasting software solving these issues. Often I find with OBS, if it's glitchy or crashy, it's because it uses a lot of CPU. Right, so you have to balance that with whatever other programs you're running on that same computer, and you may need to separate out, for example, your audio and hardwire that into your OBS computer. So OBS, can be very CPU intensive. And Vimeo Livestream, I haven't found any issues yet with it. It's been working really well for us. And we've been able to embed that into our NowNet Arts website. So we have a venue here, which I can put. And you can see actually how that looks. There we go. All right. Yes, and Marie Helen is here. Hello. And Cam Twist. Yeah, that's another very good recommendation for everybody here in video. In situation of using software like Max MSP. Yeah, Cam Twist without OBS. Yeah. Okay, so how does Vimeo Livestream compare to YouTube Livestream? From what I found, it's higher quality. So Vimeo Live is a paid service, and that's also important to note. So it's about $1,000 a year, and we had so much demand for it that we went ahead and did it. But it's also a reason that we're putting up a venue so that we may be able to host other people, to share that kind of cost. And what I found is it's been very worth it, that it has certain features that have really been good for us that are beyond Vimeo or YouTube live stream. So events such as that in your example require all participants use JackTrip studio hardware. They were actually all on the software. Nobody had that virtual studio. Everybody was on their own computers, but they all had compatible computers. So basically, to run the JackTrip open source software, you need either Linux machine or a Mac that's running High Sierra or later. Right, Windows 10 sometimes works, sometimes not, or you can run it off of a Raspberry Pi. So if you have that, and then you have your audio interface that's appropriate to your instrument, or you have your electronics routing, right, that can go into JackTrip, and your microphones as needed, and also wired internet. That's very important. Use your Ethernet cable, connected to your internet. Then It's definitely workable. So in addition to this ensemble I showed, we have the NowNet Arts Lab Ensemble, which you could also find on the NowNet Arts website. So we we had started the lab ensemble prior to the pandemic, but we've been running it more intensively during the pandemic. We were running it daily back in March, and then went more to weekly, and now we have like 1 week per month that we're running it. So we've been able to get that's was actually the lab ensemble was really instrumental in getting JackTrip to work at home actually, and once we got that happening, we've had people in 17 different countries running JackTrip from home in the lab ensemble consistently within the past couple of months. Yeah. So I can definitely verify it's been working. It's a reason I'm talking so much about it here. Yeah. Okay. And what computer hardware are you running Livestream Vimeo through? Yeah, that because they have their own servers, right? It doesn't matter so much. It's just really more, about the CPU. But really, I mean, it's more about OBS because OBS then sends to Vimeo Live. So you don't really need so much going on your computer to run Vimeo Live. It's really more all happens in OBS, and then Vimeo Live can handle kind of whatever you're sending it. Yeah. All right, a lot of questions here. So let me.
And can I just interject for a minute? I think we can also open up to voice questions as well.
Yes, yeah. So I don't have to repeat every question. But let me put in those other links here because there's so much to talk about. I know people have very specific questions too. So let me get these other links, okay, and then we can open it up. So here's SonoBus. Okay, so this came out a couple months ago and has been working well for a lot of people, especially if you have a lot of CPU available. Right, this is very CPU dependent and home internet dependent. So if you have good bandwidth, can recommend trying out SonoBus. SonoBus is also one of the only platforms I've seen that's has a beta for iOS, so you can start to perhaps run it from an iPad or an iPhone, and that's a big feature. But it's beta, so check it out. But that's been a big splash in the scene here. Okay, and here's a link to the Quack Trip Suite from Miller Puckett, right? And this is especially if you're involved in PD or running Max MSP and you're kind of in that world. I could definitely recommend checking this out, Quack Trip. And so Quack Trip is for duos, like peer-to-peer connection. Netty, which you'll see there, is for kind of small ensembles. And then Music 101 is there designed for very large ensembles. Is, from what I understand, still needs some testing. So if you'd like to get involved in the testing, then, but in any case, you can check out all those softwares. Let me give you Jamulus as well. Okay, so that's another option to check out. That can also work for larger groups and works quite well cross-platform and low bandwidth. It's a little bit more informal, but if you're looking for more options, also check out Jamulus. Yeah. I know some people, if you're trying to teach private lessons, things Clean Feed has also been brought up. I know that's a paid service, but it's a pretty low monthly feed. But that is also working on Android. I just wanted to mention that because I mentioned SonoBus on iOS, so Android. You can try Clean Feed. So let me get you that too. Okay, and there's a question about QuackTrip, built on QuackTrip. Yes, there is a lively ecosystem of many branches and versions of JackTrip and QuackTrip. And what people have done is really, because JackTrip is more of a kind of a protocol, right, in addition to being a software, and people have built many versions for their very specific needs, right? And so I could spend days talking about all the different versions that are out there. But so I just kind of recommend checking out JackTrip, and then you can get into the whole ecosystem of what is available, including developments like Quackstrip. Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to go into questions, more questions.
Oh yeah, there's some here. Wait, somebody was asking about how you get to Vimeo Live from.
That was me.
Yeah.
I can, yeah, I've been asking about the Vimeo Live thing. We've been using Vimeo Live, but I'm like, I'd so much prefer OBS as an interface, but I always like I can't ever get OBS to actually stream to Vimeo. It always like forces me to use the live stream software that Vimeo makes you download. And so when you said that you've been using OBS to connect to Vimeo live streaming, I was just wondering how you do that.
Sure. Yeah. Um, at least, yeah, from our projects we've been working with, it's just a stream key, right? So I create an event in Vimeo Live, and then I type in the stream key. So Vimeo Live gives me the stream key, and then I type that into OBS, um, and then it just sends it directly there. There's no other interface that's been needed. Yeah. So basically, I'm routing Jacktrip and our cleaned up version of Zoom into OBS. I'm doing just a little bit of processing there, to kind of crop it, and then we can also insert a couple, like some milliseconds of latency for the audio to make it line up with the video. There's little things you can do like that, also in OBS. But also be careful, like how much processing you're doing while you're trying to stream, because that can also affect the CPU.
Right. Mm-hmm. Are you talking about the latency issue with like a live feed on OBS always being misaligned with the audio? Is that what you mentioned?
Well, because Jacktrip audio is so much faster than Zoom, like it's about like twice as fast at least. So then what you end up with, like the audio comes too soon, like for the audience, right? So the audience, they're going to be getting it several seconds later because of the stream, right? So when you stream out, they're not going to like experience it in the right in the moment that you are, but they're going to experience it like 10 to 30 seconds later. But what you want to do is try to make it lined up, for the audience, the audio and the video, because with Jacktrip it's going to come earlier, so you can delay it a little bit to line up with the video in OBS before you send it out.
Okay, so you delay that through Jacktrip.
Well, through OBS.
Through OBS. Okay, cool. Thank you. There's just like so many questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, this is like hot topic these days, so I'm here to answer any questions. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so see a comment here. There needs to be a monitor, audio video stream for the performers, and distributed stream for the audience. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of build out. Yeah, into all this that we can do. Hey, James.
Well, speaking of the build out, I was curious. You said that you need to have a Mac or a Linux machine ideally, but beyond that, are there any other hardware issues? I mean, could one use any audio interfaces or even just computer audio? Does that matter?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of audio interfaces, the only one I've seen there's been some problems with are USB mics. So if someone's using that like as their microphone, then they're plugging their headset. Sometimes it works, sometimes not, depending on the compatibility of that particular model of the USB mic with that particular computer and the version of Jacktrip. So yeah, the other interfaces I haven't seen any problems with. Using the built-in, you're going to get a built-in audio quality, right?
Sure.
And so that it just depends on what you're going for. So you definitely need headphones, because one of the reasons that you can have simultaneous performers is that there is not any echo cancellation in Jacktrip, right? Or these other softwares that I've pointed everybody to. And for that reason, if you have audio coming out of the speaker going back into the microphone, of course you're going to get a feedback loop. So you definitely need headphones. Or if you can figure it out, to get your speaker away from your microphone enough, which we can do in large spaces, but often people right now are in smaller spaces. So that's why I say just use headphones, especially if you're in a large group, because even like the slightest feedback goes way, it can get out of control. So I think it's like as tight as you can get the sound, close mic it, use headphones. That's definitely the best approach. Another element of using those built-in mics is you get the room sound, right? So we get the right, and you get a very different acoustic than the other performers, right? Because you're also getting that room sound. So I recommend getting as close of a sound as you can and use headphones. But when you're in back in larger performing venues, we most often used speakers, right? That were away from our microphones, and we even had monitors that were far enough away that it wasn't getting into the mic, and we just had to set all the levels very carefully, to make that happen. But so it's possible, but again, because many people are at home right now or in offices, smaller spaces. I would just use the close mic and headphones. Yeah, I've heard people trying to use built-in mics, and I have to say, it hasn't worked for anybody yet that I've heard that you get a good enough quality with that. So I would just go ahead and even if you can get a Scarlett solo interface, just get the really basic one with basic mic. It's so much better than the built-ins. If you are using the built-ins, I would get as close to it as possible. Yeah, instead of far. Okay. So there's a question here. How do you manage the performer monitoring versus the audio stream? Right. So ideally that you have somebody that's monitoring the audience stream separately, who's not actually performing. And that could be a remote person, right? It doesn't need to be you. But as long as they're able to communicate with you, right, then they can sometimes, and even in the early days of network arts, a lot of reliance on chat, right? Because you are having to do a lot of these things remotely. And so a lot of the communication is back channel chat. Yeah. And so if somebody's monitoring, they can just, if we don't have a mixer yet, they say, oh, flute, please turn down.
Or you could put like FaceTime on your phone.
Yeah. Like for the video, what Katherine is doing, and a lot of the video artists will monitor the feed on the phone, so you can just monitor it on a different device. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also the audio people will do that too. They'll so if you wanted to monitor the stream, you just get in on a different device and check in with that device separate from your performing equipment. Mm-hmm. And luckily, a lot of these performing streams will work on phones or tablets. So since the audio platforms we're working on don't, that's been a good option to say, well, you can use your phone as a monitor. So a lot of people actually do that. Okay. So I'm thinking JackTrip's hubs upcoming mixer should have a monitor mixes for each performer. Yeah, definitely. I mean, ideally it could have all of the features, right, that we would have on a physical mixer in a venue. And we need all those controls, for the same reason that we would need them remotely. It's one thing to have volume and pan, which some of these softwares that you'll see already have. And the virtual studio, if you're connecting to that JackTrip web service, has volume and pan. But as we know, volume is not the only factor in terms of how a sound comes across, right? So you can set your gain, but the timbre of the sound may cut through more than others. And so if we have all those controls on the mixer, we can make a much better blend. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I kept asking questions
Good
before
you,
in the text, but anyway, now I'm in the video. Thanks for the nice presentation. Earlier on in the presentation, you mentioned that, for me, interesting thing, taking latency not as a problem, but rather as time time. You said
time dimensions.
dimensionality, and that was really great to hear that, because I have been thinking similar to that. Now that with all the questions coming to you, you kept responding something about typical frustration against the latency and CPU demand and stuff like that. So in a way, if your mindset is set in that direction, it just doesn't seem to be creatively working in terms of performing, collaborating with networked other collaborators. So I'm just wondering if you have any examples or any kind of projects that's actually embracing latency. I'm not talking about something like pre-adjusting the latency. You just count and then clock back or something, clock back, clock forward to match with that, because it's just like still for me mimicking to the in-person collaboration. Since this is a networked performance, I always am asking, it's actually talking about share, I got involved for many years. We had the huge networked performance back in whatever, 2004, 6. And that was linking like close to 20 countries, cities, and there were huge, think about that year. It was really massive latency, really low end, computers handling that. And one point, it was like a one project collaboration between Berlin and New York. They were considering like tackling using the latency as a creativity. And at the end, somehow their latency matched. It was a beat music. It was like a drum and bass or something. And it somehow miraculously matched, and they were very disappointed. I remember that. That was really funny. But have you got your own, you have such rich experiences with the networked performances. You have any examples?
Yes. So that paper that I showed, the research paper on synchrony, that goes into great detail about all of the strategies I've utilized for incorporating the time dimensions or the latency. So to me, it's kind of native to my work already. So I'll even compose in that way for local ensembles and solo ensembles. So and that's one of the reasons I think became involved in this medium, right? That it really felt like it expanded things that I had been doing locally. So to me, I try to bring up examples like the solar systems, right? Where you have things that are happening together in time. They're not in the same time, but they're working together as a time system, right? Or the time zones, right? That we can work together as a world, even though we're in various timings. And it's not that there isn't time, but there are time systems, right? And there are many examples of how that's been happening already, again, in the contemporary arts. So heterophony, polyphony, multiplicity, I mean, the list really goes on of many different ways that we can work with that. So to me, so it becomes about like the perception of synchrony. Right. So can we perceive that we're together? And you're talking about those like long latency projects that that you mentioned, and that there was even ways to create perception of synchrony, with very long latencies. This is definitely absolutely possible. And I remember that a lot of people bring up this example of the early 90s at the kitchen. There's See You, See Me. They were using, I think it was a 30-second delay, and they and they performed with it. Yes, you could really use a lot of different strategies, again, outlined in that paper. But I actually have an example here from Universal Synchrony music that I had on tap to play if you wanted to hear a bit of it. So this was perhaps the most extreme latency that I've dealt with. So once we had accomplished this work, accomplished synchrony, internationally, where we would get these, longer delays, and we were. I said, okay, well, how about extreme distance, like deep space, right? And so as far out as we can perceive in terms of like geographic distance. And that's when I got connected via Chris Chafe to the NASA Kepler mission. And they were doing sonifications of stars and planets and systems in deep space for the search for habitable planets. Right. And then I started to also conceive of that search as a search for synchrony as well. And so they were sonifying this data for scientific purpose, and we were able to capture some of it and use that for artistic purpose as well. So I had this project, Universal Synchrony Music, that was from 2013 to 2019. And they said that the data they were downloading, it was like every month, but that it was essentially a lot of it, in terms of Earth years, that was like now would be like 1 to 2 years. So if you if you had downloaded the data, it would count as now for like 1 to 2 years, and so then to create a perception of synchrony, like so that it's synchronous within itself and stable for 1 to 2 years, and then create a perception of synchrony with that, right? That we were connected with that. That was kind of the most. It became a little bit abstract, right? But you start talking about on the astronomical realms. Then, I mean, distance really becomes perceptual, right? That, and even now here, I mean, when we're talking about distance, I mean, clearly there is a lot of physical distance, between everybody these days, but we're transcending that through other ways and through the arts to create a perception of being together, right? And that distance becomes, it is something that can be transcended in other ways, right? And so you just start to call into question like the latency and distance, that maybe that's something else than what we really think it is. So, and that was really, this project brought me into that realm as well, this universal synchrony music. So feeling that connection with those deep space sonifications. As far out as we can get, we can still be connected. So what is distance, right? So let me just play a little bit of this. So this is just audio example, but this was sonifications of stars or planets that have been categorized as habitable, and when their orbits were aligned with Earth, there's a chime. And this is Doug Van Noort, was the kind of head electronics musician of this, so you may know Doug. And so you'll hear the chime, and when it's aligned with Earth, and then when it's closer or further away, that affects the pitch, right? And so just check this out and see if you can perceive synchrony. Okay, I've got to turn it up here, and I got to share my sound. Okay, so let me know how the sound is coming on here. Got it? Okay. So yeah, so that's part of a hour-long piece, but you can hear there's time there, but it's not a steady beat time, but there's a time system going on there, and you could feel a sense of like connection, right, and synchrony, even through sonification, right, of those realms. Um, yeah, again, to me, it's like there's the steady beat. We've had that, but you just have to kind of think of that as local, right? Um, and there's many more realms of time that we can explore.
At Experimental Intermedia, as a joke, a steady beat is like a sin. Like people will say, "Oh my God, that concert had a steady beat."
Yeah, I know. It's become an aversion to it in certain circles. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's I've definitely noticed when we did Optosonic T, nobody asked about how much latency we were dealing with. Like none of the artists, it just wasn't
Oh,
even
right.
it wasn't nobody even brought it up. So I never brought it up. But then other circles, it's like all they talk about. Can we get it? Can we get it? And we are getting closer to ways to do that. Again, as I mentioned with the uh, remote cloud servers, getting that very close to you, or having a server and having people within a certain region that are using certain hardwares and softwares. We're getting closer to more people being able to do that. But yeah, to me, once you get into this realm, it's not meant to replace local music or local arts, right? Local audiovisual arts. It's its own realm, but again, there are a lot of these elements we're using are not exclusive to network arts. They come out of trends in contemporary arts.
Anyone have any more questions? Or now we've been mostly with Sarah for an hour and a half. So if anyone wants to talk to us or ask us or tell us anything else, also please be our guest. Or if you have any concerns or problems, or if you don't know how to do something or trying to do something, there's a lot of people here.
Oh, actually, I have one more question then. Do you have anything to say about Twitch streaming?
Yes, yeah, I think that's it's a good option. I know some people here have used Twitch as well, and I think the layout and the visual nature of it is more suited to contemporary artists, and I think that's been one of the pulls to use that platform. Um, I know it's the primary purpose or where it came out of was gaming, right? With Twitch, and I guess for me it was more about listening for the audio quality and in addition to the visual quality, and that's how I got to Vimeo Live is the best that I heard consistently, and there are I think some audio processing going on in Vimeo that is making it sound better than Twitch, and that was just my perception, but I also think
okay.
Twitch is a good option. Yeah.
Yeah, Twitch seems to have some way to bring, for the visual artists, really high-end graphics, because game is going for that direction. But I could never figure out, actually maybe it's organizer side of issues. I wanted to use two computers, one sends audio, the other sends visual, because the laptops, one is too old, the other one is too weak. And so I didn't think the one computer can handle both.
Right.
OBS, like somebody else mentioned earlier, it's really CPU demanding, and it's not really great for me. But there was no solution, and I ended up running both of them together in my old computer. So So it's a two question. It's not just only Twitch, but in general, how I can achieve that.
Yes, yeah, and these are great questions. And even prior to this time, I definitely recommend any type of audio and video processing happens on a separate computer, right? And then that is routed into your computer using for any kind of network arts platforms, just because of the CPU that's demanded, and also sometimes the routing, right, doesn't work out internally, depending on your setup. So having a separate computer and hardwiring that to your computer using for your network arts platform is definitely a recommended setup. And to answer that more specifically, would require kind of delving into your more specific setup, what you're trying to do. But I can say overall that due to CPU and also internal routing complications, because a lot of these programs, you have to use several programs. They're not all compatible with each other. So then you have to find, like someone was asking before the session even started, she was on Windows and trying to work with that and Macs and routing that into network arts platforms, and it's very tricky. But I mentioned at least get that on a separate computer and hardwire could be part of the solutions. And so me, it really depends what softwares I'm running. So like JackTrip is very low CPU, but SonoBus is very high. And so it just depends what you're trying to put together. And OBS is also very high. So definitely, putting it on a different computer and doing the hardwiring is worth it. And it may add a bit of latency, right? So you also have to be able to live with that, or find the solutions with the hardware that's the lowest latency solutions.
And if I might add, because I remember, Sarah, with you once we were doing something. Oh yeah, and you were reprimanding me for not having plugged in with an Ethernet cable, and it just wasn't working. And then you said you mentioned that it would affect my image, and I said, well, I'm doing images where I don't mind. So that's another thing. I think visually, you can also, if you have limitations of computing and whatever, you can come up with solutions that might still work okay. If the image is affected, like slow down or if it's better. Just as you can, have concepts in sound that work with latency stuff. That's like another solution.
Yes, you could definitely go that direction with it as well. Incorporating the condition of the setup that you have into your work, whatever it may be. And making that effective. Yeah, absolutely.
I've been using OBS Ninja in combination with OBS Studio. And recently I was able to do something that I didn't think was possible. And I was actually, someone was creating sound remotely, and I was piping it into, I'm using Touch Designer, but I know it can work with, I think, Jitter, the 8 version. And I was able to stream it out after, a little, I had to do a few little loops there, a few things, but I was able to stream it out to YouTube perfectly in sync. I can, I think, I don't know if you want, there's the link right here. And the quality of the visuals were very good, and the quality of the audio was also excellent. This is just a 3-minute sample, and I just did this was a couple weeks ago, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted that it's doable.
Yes.
I mean, if you watch the video, it's literally, there is no, you cannot discern any latency between the sound and the visual. And doing it using all free stuff. Actually, Touch Designer, well, I'm using the free version, but using OBS Ninja, OBS Studio, and I thought that was a pretty big deal, actually, to be able to actually get that kind of result, literally, with not not using anything, you know, not, I mean, I have a Mac and Dave, who was in Peterborough, New Hampshire, you know, 60 miles away, did not have the best internet connection. I was the one doing the hosting, so I had the Ethernet connection. So it's quite amazing that it is actually possible to get, you know, almost, you know, very small latency image synchronization with sound. You know.
Yeah, and there's something to say for the fact of everything being free, which was kind of more or less the overarching theme 2 weeks ago with APO 33 from France, who out of principle only work with free or open source software. So yeah, it's also even like a philosophical question.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, congratulations on that. I'm really happy to hear about the success of your project. And yeah, those are those very specialized combinations of softwares and hardwares, that can really work for people. And yeah, that's when you have to kind of dig deep into what it is you're trying to do, because there are very specific softwares and hardwares that can get good results all together like that.
I mean, this is really, it's a trick, the way it's done. But it's for real. I mean, it literally is. I mean, once I saw how it was done, I was like, oh my god, But just so you know, I mean, the big technical thing that made this possible was NDI.
Right.
So that was sort of, and so Touch Designer is NDI enabled. I know that Jitter, maximum speed Jitter, I think version 8 has an NDI thing, so you could probably do it with that too. And once you have NDI up and running, then you can do it.
What's NDI?
So NDI is a protocol. I think it was invented by a company called NewTek, right? I think. And what it is it allows you. It's a protocol for sound and audio and video, used for networking, and it carries audio and video, and it's extremely fast. It's very efficient. So when it's, use it for, I think pros use it. I'm not exactly even sure what I mean, it's like, when they're big networks, big, they use it for communication or whatnot. But at our level, you can download for OBS Studio. You have to download from NewTek their little package. It's called NDI Tools, I believe. You install that on your computer, and then in OBS Studio, you're going to get that little NDI option, which means you can actually output an NDI protocol, and that is the key. That is really what makes it possible. You see, but again, so if you're using, like I was using Touch Designer, which has an NDI in, so you can just bring in the sound from OBS Studio, and that's going to interact with my audio reactive system, and then you just send that to YouTube, essentially. Back to OBS, and so NDI is really the key to be able to do it. But I have to say that, and I recommend. I've been using OBS Ninja. I don't know if you've used that for conferencing. It's free, and it integrates very well with OBS Studio also. So that was another thing that made it possible. But yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I've heard great things about NDI, as well, and various people bring that up. So you definitely check it out if you need that type of element for your setup.
Sarah, was that with those guys either from Norway or from Switzerland were you talking about at your conference? No?
Yes, yeah. So we had a Network Arts. So for NowNet Arts, we have an annual conference, and we had it this past November, and there were people involved with video that were speaking about NDI. I have to go back and see exactly who they were, but it was brought up a couple of times, I would say. Yeah.
I would like to ask, since you know the setup, that when we did the Optic Sonic between Jerry and me, and you guys kind of took it together, and I was out putting visuals from Max. But then I had, you know, the camera capturing Jerry to go in, and, you know, the sound as good as it, and you had his sound directly. We're just trying to do some rehearsals live and everything, and dealing with latency and quality. And I'm hearing a lot of interesting things. And since you know what we did, what should I start researching, Sarah? Anybody but Sarah, you know, because I don't really know the touch designer. I'm just, you know, and also in terms of the hardware of two computers together, I'm using a little dongle. I've been using a little dongle, the Luna display. So I don't know that that's hardware. And so I'm going, like, I want to up my game a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you're trying to do this for rehearsal, or then out for performance?
Well, it may go to performance. We're not there yet, you know. But in terms of even rehearsing, and I'm doing what, you know, Katherine mentioned, using Facebook so Jerry can see the screen. But yeah, it's rehearsal that could become performance. But, you know, even when you mentioned using some, what I'm taking my notes here. I think it was OBS to trim the Zoom window. I mean, yes. I'm not up to speed on these things, and I don't know where I should begin on that part. I know my max jitter, ins and outs to Zoom, and that's about it at this point.
Right, right. Well, I think, I mean, definitely for your the audio connection, you know, you have better options these days. I know in the earlier days we didn't have these options. Right? In the earlier days of the pandemic when we were connected with you, yeah, I think you could. It would definitely benefit to explore some of these links that I've sent, you know, and give them a try. So, yeah, either getting JackTrip going with Jerry has now, because you see he was in that clip that I sent. And so it'll be a matter of, getting you on JackTrip, or you can try, it's good to see Marie Helen, just looking at the chat. Yes, yeah, or you can try some of these other options like SonoBus or Jamulus, and see, you know, what's going to work best, you know, just between the two of you. Yeah, one of those options would definitely be good for audio. Yeah. And then once we go into the video side, right? So you're just trying to get a stream like to Jerry, right?
No, I mean, I'm capturing my screen right now in terms of these rehearsals, but that stream could be outputted. So I heard two things: one, cropping stuff for Zoom. Maybe to the hardware, separating computers. I don't know if my dongle's the same as having a hardware connection where I can use the power of two computers simultaneously. You know.
Yes. Yeah. Well. So yeah, it's right. Like the best, you know, type of setup for you. I mean, I was talking about cropping in OBS. That was so we were just meeting in Zoom, right, and then just sending that out to OBS, and then there you can like do a display capture. It's like, so if I have an external monitor for that, and you do a display capture, and then you can crop that, you know, and then sending that out goes to the streaming platforms, right? So you would have to capture like your audio and video both into OBS, just inputting them. And then you could have some controls in there, and then put in your stream key, which then goes out to the streaming service that you're using. Okay. Yeah, but it's a good question to try to get your video back to Jerry, you know, if you know, in the lowest latency
because
possible.
I mean, the little FaceTime, I projected it, so I had a big image, but yeah. And I mean, you know, maybe it's good that, you know, like, okay, if we ever did something that might be more performative, maybe we would be hosted by somebody who was more together, like you know, but I'm just saying for rehearsal, it's like, okay, Switzerland, New York, we're live, but it's so frustrating in so many ways.
In what ways?
Well, getting good sound, because all I'm doing is using a little, at this point, USB mic. I'm using two computers. So I have his Zoom coming in on one. I have max jitter on another. I have the camera input going into my computer. And then I have the output going to projection for right now. And I'm also capturing the screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think I mean, we definitely have improvements in the audio for you, to offer. There's a lot that's really been developed on that end,
Okay.
yeah, that we know. Um, and then yeah, so I would just say, yeah, check out either getting JackTrip going, um, and I could even talk more with Jerry about that, yeah,
Okay.
and yeah, or just trying SonoBus. I would say that that's maybe the next try, yeah. And
I had
yes,
a question, Sarah.
yes.
Can you just tell us more about the JackTrip certificate? I mean,
Sure.
how is it? How much does it cost, and how is it structured? How many times do you meet? And more details would be nice.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Developed this program for these very questions. Where I mean, JackTrip, it requires some training. I see it kind of related to audio engineering. Right, so when you go to a recording studio, it's good to have an audio engineer, right, that can kind of handle the session, and that requires certain training. You can record from home, right? But as we know, that can vary in quality, right? So having training, I think, is the most efficient way to learn JackDrip, right? And the uh, there is a ton of free information out there about JackDrip if you want to try it on your own and sift through it. And there's also just a forum that you can join where people ask all their questions and help each other. But it is complicated, and so that's why I recommend we say, okay, just get a certification program going so that we can get real training in this. So there's 2 tracks, right? The first one is for the virtual studio, just that hardware. So that's more the 1 month program, and that is really just specifically for that hardware. To get it up and running and show you all the potentials that you can work with. And the JackTrip certification is a 3-month program where we cover the virtual studio, but we cover all the various aspects of JackTrip. So from installation to operation to build outs for your all your equipment, like what Beth is asking about.
And do you get practice time? Do you offer? I think practice time is really essential in figuring out all the bugs in this.
Oh, absolutely.
This field.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, so it's a weekly schedule, right? Where there's a asynchronous video, that you can watch at any time for your that type of instruction, and then there's weekly live instructor labs. And we have a rotation of instructors and specialists in various topics, and I'll be there at each one, but there'll be a second instructor that will be specialists, and these are all core developers and engineers of JackTrip, coming in, so they should be able to answer every question about it that comes in.
Is approximately.
Yeah, approximately an hour.
For like the 1 month is how many hours altogether, and the 3 months is how many hours altogether?
Yeah. So each week, right, is a 1 hour video, 1 hour live lab. There's assignments in between, right, that we do, and also an ongoing email discussion forum that's moderated by the instructors, and then there's a final project. Yeah. But we cover all the ground through the certification program. So yeah, I definitely recommend it for anybody who wants to get it, especially for into the long term, right? To get proper training in it. So that course, the courses will start in March, but they will run ongoing, right? So the virtual studio will be every month. Will be a new cycle, and then every 3 months we'll start a new cycle of the larger JackTrip certification.
And did you say how much it was? How much is it?
Yes, yeah. So, we priced it out, in a nonprofit way, right? And so the 1 month program is $600, and the 3 month program is $1,800. And there are monthly, installments available, and there's also group discounts and international arrangements we can make, depending on your economy. And we definitely have longer term visions for the JackTrip Foundation to then subsidize that program. But as we're just getting it started right now, we wanted to get it up and running. So that's the cost for that.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yep. It's 4:48. We're going to have to start wrapping it up. final questions, and we can talk about what's coming up in the next 2 weeks.
I just wanted to get back just to Beth to say, if you want to send an image to Jerry, have you just tried FaceTime with your phone?
No, that's what we do.
Oh, okay. Good.
So he sees something.
Right. Okay.
But I just think that my audio, like I just think it's still awkward because of the lag in Zoom, the way that we're working, you know. But we're figuring it out. But I heard some new tools and possibilities, and then I'm wondering, I don't want to spend so much time in technology and software beyond what I'm doing. I'm already working on my Max patch and everything, you know, and then the art. But if there's something that I'm missing from when in May we did the optic sonic T, and which would be the most important thing, and it sounds like I should get JackTrip on my computer. And then here, you know, so I don't know. I don't want to do everything. I just want to do, maybe there's something new I need to do.
You should join Sarah's ensemble, and then she'll get you on JackTrip. And usually I'm the only one doing video these days, or in any case, in the one group.
Hey, I would love to. I think that's a thought. That's good.
And everyone I ask, they say, "Oh, I don't have the time," and it sounds interesting. So you should join once a month.
I'd love to.
Yeah,
I just tweaked my whole instrument's tweaked. So maybe that's the thing to do. If I didn't know that it was just an open, anyone can join kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, that I can mention that, and that's the another option. So we have the NowNet Arts Lab Ensemble. Yeah, that's running. It's open to contemporary musicians, actors, dancers, visual and video artists. And yeah, we run it. It's 1 week per month. You know, so we have a session on Monday, Friday, and then we do a demonstration performance on Saturdays. In that venue, that I showed. So yeah, that's open to anybody. Just contact me and we'll get you set up.
That's cool, because there's a friend of mine that I'm doing some work with who's a dancer, and also, so maybe if there was a special event like coming back to New York from Buenos Aires, but we'll see. You know, like, who knows?
Yes,
who knows?
Yeah, well, it's an ongoing group. Yeah, and it's been really going strong. Yeah, that's been a really wonderful development, and and then Henry's asking about anything else coming up for NowNet we want to promote. Yeah, so that would be one. Yeah, we have the lab ensemble running every month. So either to join it or to check out the demo performances. They're always on like the first Saturday of each month. And then
I checked out some.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. It's been great to have you there. And then we'll do a NowNet Arts more professional concert more late spring. Let's definitely look for that, and we'll have another conference right in November. And I mentioned our research journal is putting out another issue coming up towards the end of the month here. So I really have a lot happening in these certification programs, and also NowNet Arts has its own professional courses as well that'll run in the summer. So
I had just a quick question about, have you thought, I noticed the venue. I know that you're trying to get the venue up and running. Any price ranges you're thinking of, or how are you going to structure the pricing?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a good question, and it's perhaps something that's evolving. And yeah, happy to speak with people about. Yes, I guess that's what I'll say here now, because we're also recording, so I don't want to make statements about this, but I'll get quoted on later. But yes, I mean, we're a nonprofit, you know, and happy to work with nonprofit projects, and yeah, please get in touch. Yeah.
Okay, so is that it? We could wrap it up.
Yeah. So well, first of all, huge thank you.
Yeah, great. Really nice.
Such a wealth of information, knowledge about network art. And yes, so our next guest in 2 weeks is performance artist Kat Mustatea, and who's been, among other things, running like I guess a performance lab at the New Museum. I mean, a virtual performance lab at the New Museum. I think she was invited before the pandemic to do a performance series, and then the pandemic came. So I think she'd talk about that and her own projects that are also digital. And maybe you know a bit more about her work, Sarah? No?
Oh, sorry, I was responding to comments here.
Carol.
Yes.
Oh, because Carol, she's been a resident at Harvestworks before, right?
Oh, Kat? No, we haven't seen Kat. We've seen Heidi Bover. Okay. Heidi was a resident. And they have a collective called Edge Cut. And recently, this last year, they teamed up with Live Arts New York, and they did an Edge Cut performance, which I believe was based on Mozilla Hubs.
Mm-hmm.
It was very cool.
So that's Sunday, what date? The 28th at same time, 3 p.m. So please join. And if anyone here got arrived here by some path which wasn't Harvestworks or me, or and would like to be on the mailing list, maybe sign up to the Harvestworks newsletter. Or if you know me, write to me directly.
Yeah, that's the best way. Usually I send out the newsletter about 3 or 4 days before the next Zoom in OLAP. You know, and it also has some other news from our studio. And we send it out about every 2 weeks. So if you're interested in what we're doing, or you're interested in more OLAP, what's coming up with the OLAP, then definitely sign up on our website. Just look for the subscribe now. And thanks for coming. It was awesome that you spent time with us today. And Sarah, that was so informative. We love it, hearing all those technical details, because these are real problems to be worked out.
Absolutely. Yes, it's been really my pleasure, and happy to follow up with anybody. Please keep in touch. And thank you again, Harvestworks and Experimental Intermedia, for all your work in the field. Beautiful.